what's your biggest takeaway from this report?
It's even better than I expected. I mean, we modeled out certain numbers ourselves, and he even beat those. And I'm really the only guy on Wall Street, or I'm not on Wall Street, but I'm the only guy in this industry that actually believed in Elon's numbers. So, I'm really pleased to see that the actual margins they've been shooting for are there in the car. And granted, they sold the higher end models this quarter, but this was much more profitable than we expected.
Let's say you were one of a few. Tommy, what about you? When it comes to the broader EV landscape and investing there, is Tesla really, creating a tough hill to climb for everybody else?
I think they are. I think they're really beginning to build that defensive moat, which a lot of people were looking to and wondering, were they going to be have first mover disadvantage to some extent, or where they would create the demand for electric vehicles, show that it's feasible, and then the big guys would come in and sweep it all up. And actually, I think what we're seeing here is Elon Musk making good on his promises to generate profitability in Q3 and Q4. And I think it's a historic day. I think Tesla are absolutely right when they say that. For the Model 3 to be the best-selling car in America by revenue, I think is actually pretty historic. And it goes to show that Tesla can make good on their promises and can play by the Wall Street rules. We've seen a lot of issues there with the CEO, Elon Musk, winding up short sellers and having his run-in with the SEC. But this was a good day for Musk and for Tesla.
So, Ross, I'm curious just how bullish you are. How much better do you think the Tesla story can get?
Well, this is just the beginning of what will be a historic run for the company over the next 5 years. I mean, this story can grow exponentially as they now accelerate their production plans in China. And China is really, really all in on the EV business. And being the only 100% owned U.S. company factory in Shanghai is a huge, huge opportunity for Tesla to make a fortune in one of the best EV markets. It is the best EV market in the world. So we see this consecutive launch of the Model Y, the truck, hopefully the Roadster soon, just continuing to ramp up their growth and a level of growth that we haven't seen really from any tech company recently, but especially any car company.
That said, Tommy, you've got other car makers on Tesla's heels. You've got the question of whether Tesla can continue to service all of these cars now that they are all out there in the wild. Can Tesla keep it up?
I think it's a great question, Emily. They have obviously a very different model, different distribution model, a lot of online sales, a lot of owned dealerships and so on. They're doing things in a very, very different way. They really are disrupting the auto industry. And I think you raised a good point. How do they deal with these cars in the wild? We haven't seen large volumes of Teslas out in the wild year upon year upon year. So that will be an interesting challenge. But look, so far they keep on meeting those challenges head on. I think what I would like to see, if I were an investor, which I'm not in Tesla, I would like to see just that executive bench of leadership be built out a little bit. Obviously, they're going to see a new chairman come in, or chairwoman, which is enforced upon them. But they've also had some departures at the executive level, which you probably want to see that bench deepen there, just to bring in the experience to deal with the types of issues that you're talking about.
Several departures, in the finance department, in the manufacturing department. Ross, how much of that is a concern to you?
Well, it's obviously a concern, but when you look at it in the context of the just enormous stress that the company's been under this year, it's not surprising. Just the stress I've been under as an investor, I can't imagine working there. So that doesn't surprise me, although it's not preferable. But I agree that the most important thing that they do is build confidence by building up a management team around Elon. This is the opportunity for the board and the company to make very strong steps to build a plan to be a much bigger company. We can't have a company where only one guy is the main factor in the company. Succession planning is hugely important. So I agree. I think that's the next big step for Tesla, is to continue to mature as a company.
Well, and it seems that Elon Musk has been able to do that at his other company, SpaceX, but he hasn't been able to do that over and over again at Tesla, Tommy. Musk, even though he's apologized for certain things, it doesn't seem as if his behavior is really changing. So can we be confident that will happen?
I don't know you could ever be confident that Elon Musk will conform. I think he's the ultimate non-conformist, and he's taken a lot of criticism for that. Much of it obviously self-inflicted with his rather impulsive tweets. And you'd like to think that he is intelligent enough to stop that kind of behavior. But I think he has taken a lot of criticism. And today is, I think, to some level, vindication for him. This is a guy who has almost single-handedly dragged forward electric vehicles and made it aspirational, and then single-handedly dragged the rest of the auto industry with him to say, okay, we are moving to an electric vehicle world. And that is huge news for Tesla. It's frankly huge news for society as well. I think often as onlookers, we can get a bit down on business, and there's certainly been lots of bad news in terms of the relationship between business and society recently, particularly in tech. And here I think you see someone who is genuinely making the world a better place. He is non-conformist, but I think shareholders who invested and bought the stock, they knew what they were getting in for. They were getting themselves into a company which had a CEO who was a visionary, who could drag things forward, who could really disrupt industries, but who was never going to be a sort of career CEO who always played by the rules. Now, look, he has to play by the legal rules, and he fell foul of that. But I think he's learning on the job. And yes, he has to learn how to move from a sort of ultra growth phase, an ultra disruptor phase, if you will, and learn how to really scale that into the mature company that Tesla can and should become.
Right, and Elon Musk certainly deserves credit for all of that, but let's take a look at some of the other things that happened this quarter, one of which was promising that he was going to take Tesla private and had the funding secured to do so, which was in fact not true. Both Tesla and Musk had to pay, $20 million fine because of that. He has smoked weed in a video podcast. He has cut off analysts, been outright disrespectful to analysts on earnings calls. So Ross, as much as you like Elon Musk, what would you like to see less of?
Emily, I think all of your criticism's fair, but when you look at CEOs like Les Moonves being removed from office for attacking people in his office or whatever you might say, this is benign stuff compared to some of the stuff you're seeing in CEO offices all around major corporations in America. So let's keep in perspective smoking pot versus sexual harassment, for example. And so I think, I don't personally think Elon is normal or should be try to act normal when he's not. I think the tweet was a mistake, and it certainly was a costly mistake, but far from the worst thing a human could do. So I think it's a hypersensitive environment around Tesla. A lot of Elon's fans actually like that he's a real person and a human being, and looks like a pretty interesting and fun guy too. So I think some of that criticism is reasonable and fair, but we live in a different world today. When you look at the President of the United States and how he acts, and that's the President of our nation, Elon's behavior looks actually quite normal.
Well, to be clear, we're not comparing his behavior to any of the people you just mentioned. I'm asking about defrauding investors or potentially defrauding investors.
I don't think he was defrauding investors. I think he had a deal with Saudi Arabia. The SEC documents clearly say that he perceived that he had a deal with it. The fact he tweeted those two fateful words, even the tweet itself said considering taking Tesla private. If he didn't tweet funding secured, we wouldn't have been there. Look, it was a mistake, and I'm not trying to minimize that, but this is, once again, as far from the type of corporate scandals we see at Facebook, for example. It's nothing.